Good morning, Miigwech. We are here on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I'm with Bea Bruske, President of the Canadian Labour Congress, Patrick Campbell, Canadian Regional Director of the International Union of Operating Engineers, Matt Wayland, Canadian Director of Government Relations, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the IBEW, Marty Warren, National Director of the United Steelworkers of Canada, and Gil McGowan, President of the Alberta Federation of Labour. We're here this morning to call out Pierre Poilievre's attempt to attack the future of Canadian workers and Canadian energy workers in particular. Our committee, the Natural Resources Committee, over the last year held over 56 meetings with 133 witnesses and 120 hours of hearings on issues of the clean energy transition. And all that time, not one Conservative member ever brought forward a worker to speak on what the transition means. It was New Democrats who brought the coal workers who were affected by the coal transition. In all that time, the Conservatives interfered, undermined, used gong show tactics, petty whining, continual interference to derail the voice of workers who are living the energy transition now and expect from the Canadian government a better future using their skills and their talents. When the Carpenters Union came to speak on the opportunities for training and for improving worker access in a clean energy economy, the Conservatives shut them down. When the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers came to speak on the issue of clean energy, the Conservatives used tactics to shut them down. When the President of the Canadian Labour Congress came, the Conservatives shut them down. Pierre Poilievre is using energy workers and Canadian workers across this country as pawns in his agenda to slow down Parliament and to deny the climate crisis. The people who are on this stage with me represent the hundreds of thousands of Canadian workers who are living the transition now, and they are calling on Pierre Poilievre to stop playing games to get C-50, the bill on sustainable jobs, through the House, and Bill C-49, so our communities in Atlantic Canada can compete with the incredible opportunities in offshore renewable energy. You know, this past year we lost over 1,500 energy workers at Suncor. We've lost 45,000 in the oil patch. We're going to lose more. Pierre Poilievre is offering nothing to them, but he would use those job losses in his petty fights with Justin Trudeau. We're here to say that those workers have huge opportunities and a huge future, but we need to put a plan in place to make that happen. That's what C-50 is here for. South of the border, in the space of 1 year, nearly 500,000 jobs have been created from the all-of-government approach on clean energy. In the Atlantic region of the United States, massive offshore projects are taking place while our workers and our communities are still waiting for the rules to be put in place. They're calling the investments that are taking place in the United States so unprecedented, they're calling it hyper-investments in clean tech. And meanwhile, Canada is sitting on the sidelines, and we have Pierre Poilievre deliberately trying to undermine the future of Canadian workers and the Canadian economy in the midst of the biggest economic transformation since the Industrial Revolution. We're saying to Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives, enough with the games. We need to move forward with this clean energy future. I'll now pass it over to Ms. Bruske.
Thank you. We know that climate change is already affecting workers and communities right across the country, and it's already affecting our economy and our jobs. Workers know that we absolutely need to meet the ambitious climate targets to avoid the worst impacts from climate change. And workers know what this change will mean for them. They need to know what the future is going to hold. Workers cannot accept Canada's contribution to meeting climate targets as a race to the bottom with lower wages, fewer opportunities, and a lower quality of life. Instead, by focusing on good union jobs in a net zero economy, we can set the table for generations of prosperity. Canada's Sustainable Jobs Act is an encouraging start, and with the right improvements, this bill can make a meaningful difference to workers. It can give a real voice to their future. It can guide the creation of good, new unionized jobs in net zero environments. It can strengthen good jobs and vibrant communities by supporting the decarbonization of good union jobs that exist today in those communities. And it can ensure that the rest of the world is attracting investments and future industries and good jobs, that Canada's workers are not left behind in those investments. But workers can't be heard, and workers could be left behind if MPs are letting this progress grind to a halt. Workers, whether they're in oil and gas and forestry and mining and services and manufacturing, healthcare, public services, they need their voice to be heard on this piece of legislation. And I'm calling on Conservatives MPs to stop preventing workers from having their voices heard on this bill. I'm calling on government and all MPs to get this bill fixed and get it passed so that workers are not left behind. Canada's closest trading partner, the United States, has made it crystal clear that they want industries and jobs that will lead to global net zero economy, and they're going to do it with good union jobs, and they're doing it right now. Canada can't afford to stand still. The world is moving faster than ever, and if we stand still, Canada will lose those job opportunities. We will lose those investments and lose the quality of life for Canadians right across this country. So I want to thank Charlie Angus for his work on this and keeping this issue at the top of the list, and we stand with him in calling for government and for all MPs to get this legislation passed.
And if there's any questions, we'll take them.
Yeah, I have a question. This is for Mr. Bruske and maybe Mr. McGowan as well, if he wants to weigh in. Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives are, at least to me, making a play for the workers' vote, for the Labour vote. Mr. Angus even held a rally in your riding earlier this year. And I was just wondering if you could maybe explain why you're standing on this stage today and why you would advise the workers you represent not to heed his message.
Because it's empty rhetoric, quite frankly. Workers need to know that there is going to be a bill that's going to be addressing and driving investments in the communities and in the industries in which they work and live. And so we need to actually make sure that this bill gets passed so that workers, their unions, the employers, and various levels of government can start working on these issues. By wasting time, we are wasting an opportunity to actually get those investments and to start that work. And workers don't need more delays. We need to know concrete solutions to the problems that we're facing today. So we need to get serious about this, and the Tories clearly are not serious about this.
What we've seen from Pierre Poilievre and other members of the Conservative Party, and what we saw on display in the committee meeting last night, is the worst kind of performative, deceptive politics. What the Conservatives are saying in those committee hearings and what they're saying on social media is that this bill, the Sustainable Jobs Bill, is a blueprint for phasing out oil and gas. They're targeting workers, especially in my home province of Alberta. But nothing could be further from the truth. Bill C-50 is really just about creating a framework for discussion on diversifying our economy so that we're prepared for a lower carbon future. So that's good for workers, it's good for business, it's good for the country. And if you actually read the bill, which the members of the committee, the Conservative members of the committee, they're counting on Canadians not actually doing, but if you actually read the bill, all it does is create a committee, give workers a seat at the table, and sets in motion a discussion that I think most Canadians understand, and working Canadians, even in my province of Alberta, it's a conversation we understand that we need to have. So, my question, I have two questions for the Conservatives, and especially members of that committee who are trying to filibuster this bill. The first question is, do they think it's better to stick our heads in the sand than plan for a future that's clearly going to be different for our past? Do they really think that that's in the best interest of Canadians, and especially working Canadians? And second, the bill clearly establishes that working people should have a seat at the table for this conversation. So my question to the Conservatives is, are they opposed to workers having a say? Are they opposed to workers having a seat at the table? Because based on the filibustering that we've seen in the committee and their clear attempt to stop this bill from proceeding in the legislative process, that certainly seems what they're trying to do. They're trying to shut workers down and shut them out from a really important conversation about the economic future of our country.
So why is this, to borrow your words, why is this empty rhetoric working? Like, obviously he's doing very well in the polls. Is there anything he's saying that you feel is resonating with workers, and why do you think that is?
The reality is, when you peek behind the curtain of that empty rhetoric, there's nothing there. There's nothing of substance. There's no solutions. There's no coming to the table with a plan. And so, you know, it is empty rhetoric, and it is our job to remind workers that it is, in fact, empty rhetoric, and that we need solutions to the problems that their families are facing, that their communities are facing. And that's what we're here to do today, and that's what we're going to continue to do through the various different union affiliates that are standing behind me.
I think what you're seeing with Pierre Poilievre is his tactic is rage farming. So again, he came to my region and made fun of EV cars. I come from mining country. You don't think that our whole region is dependent on the future of EV technology, yet they stand up in the House day after day ridiculing EV technology when we have companies like Volkswagen investing $7 billion into plants. That's unprecedented investment. They don't like that investment because it shows that there's opportunities that are happening now and they're not going to get credit for. So they come into my region and want to rage farm all they want. They can, but the idea that workers who work in the mines are going to fall for the idea that critical minerals is not a good investment they're telling those workers to slit their own throats to support Pierre Poilievre. He does not have their interests at heart.
Natasha Bilewski, Canada's National Observer. My question is, I mean, kind of for all of you, but mostly directed at Bea, Gil, Marty, Patrick, and Matt. I'd like to know if you've had any engagement with the Conservatives, you know, just conversations about the legislation and their stance on it leading up to this point, and if so, sort of what the content of those conversations has been, if it's productive.
I have not.
The reality is that most of the MPs who are impeding the progress of this bill are from my province. But I want to make something really crystal clear today. Those Conservative MPs who are trying to filibuster this bill, they may come from Alberta, but they don't represent all of Albertans, and they certainly don't represent the best interests of working Albertans. You know, the majority of people in my province understand that change is happening, whether we like it or not, and they also understand that it's better to prepare for change than stick our heads in the sand. But instead of engaging in constructive conversations about the opportunities that a lower carbon future might present, even for oil and gas producing regions like Alberta, you know, members of the Conservative Party here in Ottawa have instead chosen to, you know, turn this into a political opportunity. And so they're deliberately mischaracterizing what Bill C-50, the Sustainable Jobs Act, is really about. And you know, they're just trying, as Charlie said, they're rage farming. They're instead of offering solutions, they're trying to whip up anger and stoke anxiety, and that's not productive. And frankly, I'm a little embarrassed that this is how Alberta is being represented in Ottawa, because it's actually not a fair representation of the desire among working Albertans to have a really constructive conversation about the unfolding energy transition. You know, we can plan for the future and be prepared, or we could stick our heads in the sand and get run over by change. And unfortunately, that seems to be that latter alternative seems to be what the Conservatives are working towards, and that's a real shame.
Maybe I'll just comment to say, you know, why I'm here as the Steelworker National Director is to support Charlie and the NDP. This is such critical legislation. You know, our union is a heavy industrial union in mining, steel, and many other industrial sectors, and it matters to our members. Our members understand the green economy, the future, the low carbon future is important. They want it for their kids, their grandchildren. By the same thing, we need a structure like this bill to start that process, because right now our members have a lot of anxiety. What does it mean? How does it affect me? And through this bill, it creates the framework where we can start to have those discussions so workers have a voice, and that helps us bring everybody along to where we need to go. So I want to thank Charlie and the NDP and Bea for the work they've done on this and will continue to do.
And Charlie, if you want to add anything about your conversations, if you've managed to have any productive ones, you know, with members on committee, and then I have a follow-up question for the rest of you.
Well, I've reached out to the Conservatives. They continue to bring forward motions that have nothing to do with this in order to block it. I said, we'll deal with your motions. But right now, the rules in Parliament is that when legislation is referred to committee, all the working committee is interrupted to deal with legislation. That's our job as legislators. I spent the last 19 years in opposition. I'm used to not getting my way a lot of the time. When legislation comes, our job is to deal with legislation from the government, whether we like it or not. What the Conservatives are trying to do is to impede legislation that went through here, that went through a whole process to set up. It went through votes in the House. It's our job to get this job done. And what we're seeing now is actually really silly, vindictive, and childish behavior while jobs and our economic future is on the line.
And just to everyone, it's no secret Labour has worked very hard on this bill behind the scenes with the NDP, with the Liberals, and, if the Conservatives continue to delay and sort of filibuster and oppose this legislation in a variety of ways, like what kind of action are your organizations, able and willing to take to try and move the dial on that?
I think for us, we will we'll obviously wait and we'll see where this goes in a short period of time, and then we'll do what we do. We'll rally in the streets. We'll take them on in their ridings. We'll make sure workers visit them in their ridings and hear from workers, because they don't seem to be listening to workers. So that's what we'll do. As this unfolds, that they have to hear from the Steelworkers Union and our members how they're dragging the puck, how their delays are affecting them, their life, and even the facilities they're working at, because the future's unclear without this type of framework.
We will be connecting with the 3 million Canadian workers that are under the umbrella of the CLC to make sure that they know why this legislation is being held up and who's to blame for this. So we will be making sure that we engage all workers across all sectors right across this country to understand what is at stake here and who the culprit is.
Yeah. So you asked the question, what will we do if they continue to block this? But from our perspective, it's really important for people to understand that Bill C-50, the Sustainable Jobs Act, gives workers, especially those workers who have a stake in the unfolding global energy transition, the bill gives workers a seat at the table so that they'll have a say in their own economic future. And so if Pierre Poilievre and the other members of the Conservative Party keep blocking this, we're going to get the message out in Conservative heartland, Alberta, that this is a party that is hell-bent on denying workers a seat at the table to have influence on their own future. I don't know how they think that that's a good message to sell to workers who they're asking for political support. Why would a worker give support to a party that is denying those very workers a seat at the table to have influence on the future of their jobs and the economy in which they live? So, I mean, on one hand, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party, they're trying to say they're a party of workers. But on the other hand, in the real world, we see that they're trying to deny us a real seat at the table to discuss our own economic future. That's the real Conservative Party. And if they continue with this filibustering, if they continue with this obstruction, and if they continue to actively try to deny us a seat at the table, we're going to get that message out, and we're going to unmask this party for what they really are, and that's an anti-worker party.
Can I ask one more? Is that all right? Just because I'm curious, there seems to be like a disconnect between what you guys are saying up here and what we're seeing in the polls. So I'm just wondering if any of the labor leaders, if you guys have had challenges communicating the fact that you believe it's empty rhetoric to the people you represent. Like, why aren't they getting the message? Why aren't the 3 million Canadians kind of buying into that this is just rage farming?
Well, I think we've tried to let the process take place, but as we seen yesterday, we're hitting a stone wall. So I think that piece of the messaging is going to start to double down. And again, it's the challenge of getting it to our members, getting it out to Canadians that the Conservatives are taking away workers' voices in the new economy, in the transition. And I think you'll see the Canadian Labour Congress and many other unions double down on that with their members. And we all know it's always challenging as our members and others have, got other things going on in their lives, but we have to double down and take extra time, whether it's through new media, paper media, face-to-face, nothing better than that, to then start to engage our members, how serious and where we're at today, that they need to start to engage themselves as well.
Thank you.
I have no questions online, so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.